was temporary. So I think he understood that there was like a lot of inherent value there. And so, one of the first things he did was he opened an architectural bookstore and cafe and restaurant called City Spirit, which they still have City Spirit reunions today. They just had one a few weeks ago, and like 100 people showed up that remember that spot. So that just shows you kind of the power of like creating a place, right? And what that can do, even when it's, City Spirit hasn't been around for a long time. So he did that. He did some of the first loft conversions with the industrial buildings that were down there.
I want a condo in the Benjamin Moore building so fucking bad.
I know, it's a beautiful building.
That's where I plan to it's like you see it on TV shows and movies. You're like, oh, look at that sick ass, exposed ventilation, lofts. Like, it's like you see it on the New Girl TV show and you're like these big draw doors. You're
right.
Like, I want one of those.
Yeah, totally.
And then you're like, oh, it's going to be like $700 million now if you want one. Like, right. Fuck me.
I think we can vision board it. I've heard of this new tactic called vision boarding.
If you put it out there, it happens.
Exactly. On that note, was this around the time, I understand the white flight and the kind of movement towards suburbia, but was this happening when the Rocky Stadium first got built? Was that when? Because that seemed like a big piece that Lodo.
Yeah, that probably was like one of the major things that allowed people to sort of see, or just, helped Lodo take off. This was actually before that period of time, yeah. So this is when they're up until the early 90s. If you think about like where 15th Street goes through Lodo and then it kind of goes through like Riverfront Park. So there used to be viaducts that went, like elevated roadways that went across the riverfront area and then landed in what's now Lower Highland or Lowhigh. So there were these crazy elevated streets. I mean, there are pictures of Denver from that era where you've got like burned out cars like parked under these elevated roads, and it was just a different time. So yeah, like into that kind of environment, I think is where Mickey recognized that there was a lot of opportunity, and there was the ability to create community in places that, Lodo was a kind of bombed out former industrial area, so there was no one really even living there at that time. And so out of that, he and Dana Crawford and a few other pretty visionary folks were able to build a place.
You mentioned something, before Lodo was even Lodo. It makes me want to know, which abbreviation do you find the worst?
That's a good one. You mean just in Denver neighborhoods?
Yeah, just of the Denver neighborhoods, like slow high, bullshit, slogans, whatever they may be.
I feel like I probably don't even know them all. Being from here, like I probably block them out and think about the neighborhood as just what it used to be called, but Low-High drives me nuts. That was the one that kind of took it over the edge for me. It's so stupid.
It's kind of like a double negative. Or, like, Low-High. Like, it just, I don't know.
Right.
I like Rhino works. Rhino's kind of, it makes sense.
Even Rhino kind of bugs me a little bit. When I hear those acronyms, what I think of is,
hipsters?
Well, no, not even hipsters. It was somebody was like, we have to give it a catchy name because that's what's going to bring people in here. You know what I mean? And I think when you go to more mature cities, they don't, for the most part, don't have those neighborhoods because there's not somebody trying to market the neighborhood like it's really functioning as a community, right? So the acronyms bother me.
Nice. So D, all of the above.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and you mentioned Dana Crawford, and just for our listeners, that's the woman behind kind of like the Union Station redo and everything. Am I correct?
Yeah, and what she's really known for is Larimer Square. So Larimer Square, there was a lot of urban renewal happening in the 60s, and this was happening all over the country. So municipalities, because the cities had in a lot of ways emptied out, they were going through thinking that the way they were going to make the cities work again was by knocking down a lot of the buildings that were vacant or underused and then filling those in with like parking lots and roadways and highways and more modern towers and things that now have been thoroughly debunked as being probably the single worst thing you can do for a city is to take the city part of a city out of it, like take the soul out of the city. Dana really led the movement to keep all the buildings on Larimer Square because that's some of the most beautiful kind of Victorian era. Denver City Hall used to be at the end of Larimer Square, so that's the reason that pocket is kind of so like just such beautiful Victorian architecture.
Nice, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
The more you know.
Yeah, there you go.
Picture that NBC little star that's going across the thing. Yeah, and so it feels like this is a real informative because I like to picture, and we've had Steve Karowski, he's from the Colorado Brewers Guild, and he's a native as well.
Cool.
He probably the same cup of age range as y'all. I'm not going to date anyone here. Mm-hmm. But he was talking about how, like, people used to literally leave the neighborhood of downtown. It's like you would work down here, and this is like late 90s when Hick was doing Wind Coop and stuff.
Yep.
And he's like, and then people would get the fuck out.
That's right.
And so he was like, it's been great to watch this transformation. And I mean, you're pretty hands-on in this transformation. What's your favorite part about it? Is it, bringing sports teams to town? Is it seeing, the flight coming back to town, or the young people kind of coming in? What's the most prideful thing that you've been able to take from y'all's, I guess, success?
So, I mean, there's a lot of things that I really love about the idea of people being in the city and like feeling ownership of the city. And, to be fair, there have always been people who have lived, and there's always been ownership in the city. And that's one of the challenges, is that who are those people, right? As that kind of transformation happens. But, one of the things that I love is what is so great about cities is having lots of people from a lot of different backgrounds all together in one place, and just the collision of like ideas that happens, the relationships that are formed out of that. In a city, you can find somebody who has the same, like weird thing that you like, they like that too. Whereas if you're in a small town, you might be the only one who's into whatever that is, right? So really the buildings part of it is just a facilitation of relationships. So, seeing people walking on streets that I know 150 years ago, that street was built and was populated by people at that time too. It's kind of like the city's doing what it was built to do again. And to be fair, there's a lot of challenges associated with that too, but I think, the upshot is that.
Nice.
We tend to go on tangents and go all kinds of different ways, but I
resent that.
Well, they're good tangents.
Okay.
But like trying to get back kind of your first gig with the Zepplin group.
Right.
Was, so you mentioned the source.
Right.
And so they said, you want to do management.
Project manage it, yeah.
Yeah, so what did that involve? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of different things. I think part of it too is because we're, our company is a real estate development company, but it's really rooted in the community. We keep our buildings. Like a lot of development companies just build something, fill it, and flip it, and sell it to like an investment trust. I think we're interested in like the long-term life of these projects and how they benefit, the community, the broader community. With that in mind, that means that we get into a lot of things that other developers may not necessarily get into. So, we're opening up a market hall that's got space for vendors and for restaurants. We're not just trying to sort of fill it with whoever's going to take it, because we want that thing to have like a really great life for the long term and serve the community. So part of my job was working with Kyle. I mean, the source was really Kyle's baby. And going out and meeting with different vendors. We sort of had a roster in mind of different vendors that made sense in that building to us. And so rather than us just taking inbound calls from brokers, we were out like meeting with individual people. Like we had sort of identified whether it's this coffee roaster or that restaurant and sat down with them and kind of told them about the project and shared the vision and asked them if they wanted to be part of that community. So that was part of my job, like out meeting people and sort of talking about what the big idea behind the source was, which I can dig into if you want me to in a minute. But part of it too is just literally construction. So you've got subcontractors, you've got a general contractor working in the building, working with them, like managing timelines, managing build-outs, managing budgets. And so where I sort of found myself was the intersection between the people who are coming in, but then overseeing the process to get that thing up to where it needed to go. And this is with a team of people, so by no means was I single-handedly doing this.
Right.
But it's, it's kind of like between the physical construction and then, the actual tenants and vendors who are moving in.
So it's almost like you were networking in the sense of like, obviously you can fill this off, or, the source with a bunch of cheese dicks.
Right.
And then, but it wouldn't be representative of kind of y'all's goals.
Right.
Y'all's mission plan, your company's kind of like base it, like it's fun because you're like, I kind of get to handpick who I put in here.
Right.
And shout out to our friends, Mary McLean, Rhino Yacht Club.
Absolutely.
Acorn's killing it. And then now y'all have the Source Hotel, and y'all brought in another friend of ours, guest of the program, technically Southern, Alon Shaya, so y'all have been able to I'd say, y'all are fucking slaying it.
Yeah.
That's the best way I can describe it. Y'all are killing it. So with the hotel coming up and the brutally expensive bar at the Woodford or whatever the fuck that thing's called, I hate that place, man. $14 cocktails, at the minimum.
Where is this?
The place that has the view that overlooks down. I love everything downstairs. Smoke's got good barbecue on occasion. Acorn, what's the Mexican place with the filet?
Comida.
God, with the filet quesadilla. Mm-hmm. Get out of here. It's so good. So it's like you found people that kind of had the same, like, we want to make this neighborhood stay a neighborhood.
For sure.
And you kind of still get to, it's a community filled. So
yeah, and like continuing to build on that idea. The Source, 15 vendors, and then adding the hotel has a second market hall on the ground floor. So then you've got these two sister market halls with like 25 different people. And a lot of the idea there too was independent brands, people who have kind of devoted their lives to a specific craft, whether that's coffee roasting or beer brewing or, like Winter Session has a shop in the Source, so that's sewing these amazing bags. And so what kind of the tie that binds that project is these people who are so passionate about a specific craft or a specific, whether it's cooking or baking or whatever, and they have that in common. And so for a guest to walk in there, they just have immediate access to all these people who are so specialized in what they do. And again, back to cities, that's the best part of a city is you get kind of the best of the best, right? We're kind of like human achievement, what people really care about and what they're pursuing. So yeah, and then adding a hospitality component, 100 rooms. I don't know if you've been in any of the rooms, but some of them have glass garage doors that roll up. They're really, we kind of approach the rooms with a similar vision to a lot of our other projects where, what are some things that are like more universal to people? How do we do really big windows, get lots of natural light in, allow for fresh air, by being able to roll up a glass garage door, great design. So yeah, adding kind of the hotel component. And then people who are coming through, they're not just visiting great vendors. They're walking around, and there's people from all over the country and all over the world that are there too. So you're getting the best of kind of that kind of mixing of different types of folks as well, yeah.
That's awesome. And no, I haven't been in your hotel, but if y'all want us to do one of those staycations where we promote the hotel,
sounds great.
I'm willing to go, lay naked in one of y'all's beds and roll the windows up and just kind of watch
I'll be that guinea pig.
No, shut the fuck up. I just volunteered. No, Chris does not. I got first dibs.
You guys really sacrificed for this podcast.
We'll take one for the team.
A lot.
We're willing to take one for the team.
So when you were trying to get when you were reaching out to people to see if they're interested in kind of becoming a vendor or filling up some spots there, did you have trouble like finding people interested, or was it just kind of like, oh man, I want to put my restaurant in there, like let me add it, and then you guys had to kind of look at the bigger picture and decide? Or
no, at that time, that was like 2011, 2012, 2013, right? And then we opened in fall 2013. A lot of people had not even been to that part of the city yet. So, RiverNorth as an art district was already a thing, but people weren't that familiar with Brighton Boulevard other than being kind of a backdoor to get to the airport. And so, and market halls were not yet a common thing, right? We were inspired by the Ferry Building and Chelsea Market in New York, and there was kind of this like resurgence of the market idea a little bit, kind of in like the 90s and 2000s, Oxbow Market in Napa. But the idea of every town having like a market hall or a food hall was not really a thing. So to talk to somebody and say, hey, we're going to do this market hall, which, you're probably not familiar with that concept. Here's our idea behind it. We're going to do it in an 1880s iron foundry in a part of the city that you've never been to. I think we talked to 100 different.
Was it a hard sell? For real?
Yes, it really was.
I wouldn't have thought that because that's about when the green boom started,
Right.
Or at least that's what the green rush or whatever millennials started flocking and things. But you're right, like Brighton Boulevard was a shit road. You couldn't even ride there was just that one gas station, one liquor store.
Yep.
And that gas station was like the only one in downtown that had diesels. So if you had a diesel car, that's the only reason I would come down Brighton was because a buddy of ours had a diesel car.
Yeah, because it was like a big trucking corridor. That makes sense. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so like it really was not, I wouldn't have thought it was still a hard sell, and especially now that you think back on it, I guess I get it a little bit, but
this is before Union Station. Union Station was like
under construction.
Kind of an empty, it wasn't even under construction. It was like an empty former train station, right? So, it really was, but I think the folks that signed up, and wanted to be sort of the pioneers in that part of the city,
Are reaping bennies now.
Yeah, and we're really thankful for them. And Marion McLean, obviously.
Yeah,
who you guys know.
They're a hoot and a holler.
Yep.
They're a hoot and a holler.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed about the source and some of the other developments is just the amount of open space. Because like it's funny how some of these markets have kind of come up back like in other parts of the country.
Right.
So for instance, like I remember when I was in Atlanta last time, I went and visited one of their like Ponche City markets or something.
I've been to that one.
And there's a lot more. There's way more like spots filled. It seems like you guys kind of wanted just kind of like open environment.